The tribal leaders, I would have just invited them to come up and say something about this place, but they're all out doing important tribal work today. Nevertheless, I'm grateful that they allowed us to be in this beautiful facility, and we know that these are the sovereign lands not only of the Elk Valley Rancheria, but citizens of the tribe that descend from the Tolowa, the Chetco, the Yurok, the Karuk, and the Hupa peoples. We are here to thank them, and we honor their elders, past, present, and emerging, and really want to express my gratitude for their continuing stewardship of this beautiful place. I couldn't help but think as the black bear ran across the road in front of me that there's this spectacular wildlife crossing that the tribe is planning, that we are supporting, and that is going to be a wonderful way to both honor pedestrian and traffic safety and the wildlife values that are such an important part of this place. So lots of good things happening up here in Del Norte County. I want to thank some of your local community leaders who are here to join us. I saw Supervisor Val Starkey earlier. And I'm told that a couple of your colleagues, Val, may be with us too. Is Chris Howard here? He was perhaps going to join us, and then Darren Short. So if they join us, we will just thank them in advance. Appreciate working with you on so many important local issues. And let me just tell you how happy I am to be doing town halls again. I mean, we sort of stopped doing this during the pandemic, but now that everything's normal again in the country, I think it's a great time to go back to doing them. The reason I really like town halls is I just think it's democracy. Embodied in the most important way. It's a way for me to be accessible to all of you. It's a way for me to feel a little more connected to the communities that I need to represent. That is my job. I hear things in these town halls from folks I represent that help inform the work I do, and hopefully you have a better sense of the work that I'm trying to do on your behalf through the discourse that we have. The other thing I really like about these is that, look, we all look at our politics today, and I think they're just kind of tough. It's almost unrecognizable, the amount of vitriol and conflict and division. And in these community conversations, you know, there's nothing quite like real life, face-to-face, just sort of human-to-human connection. I believe there's a lot more that unites us than divides us. Even when we disagree on things politically, I think you can have constructive conversations, and in a way, when we do that, we are just better, I think, than the ugly politics we see on our televisions and our social media feeds. So I'm going to keep doing these things. I know that there are some concerns about security, and I apologize that I think some of you or all of you had to be wanded coming in today. I don't like the fact that we have these new security protocols, but it's sort of a sign of the times. We will do what we need to do, though, to keep meeting with people and having these direct conversations, because I think our democracy needs it. So thank you for bearing with us for that, and for spending a little bit of time with me on a beautiful weekend morning. The way this goes with town halls is I hope you came here with lots of ideas and questions. I will say a few words at the top in a moment about what's going on in Washington. I won't go on too long and make too much of a speech, because I want to get to your questions and to the dialogue part of this meeting. But this is not just for people who agree with me on everything. I hope there are people here who disagree with me on things, and I want to have that conversation and that exchange. That's missing, I think, too much in our politics today. We can have it in a way that's really quite civil and constructive, and that is my hope. So toward that end, when people are asking a question or making a statement, I hope we'll all be respectful. I will certainly listen and respect whoever is speaking. I hope you will all do the same, no matter what they have to say. And if you can, when we get to that point, try to keep your comment or question to about a minute. You can get almost anything in a minute if you want to. And I have found a nice little technique for helping things get moving is when someone goes too much beyond a minute, You know, the Academy Awards, how they kind of bring the music up a little bit. Maybe you can just kind of give them a little quiet, constructive applause to encourage them to sort of finish it up, because we want to get to as many of you as possible and cover as much ground as possible. Okay, now, a little bit about just the context for this conversation. This is not a normal time. We're 10 months in to the new Trump administration, and you know, there's been some chaos, starting really right away with the new kind of agency that the president created, the Department of Government Efficiency, which is not an actual department, but it's a task that he gave to Elon Musk and some other people to start combing through the government and making cuts and doing layoffs and all kinds of things. And that happened. It definitely caused some disruption and concern and some cuts that had to be taken back, things like firefighters and air traffic controllers. We have done our best to try to navigate through that kind of chaos, but I think the real thing about these first 10 moments, and look, I'm talking to you right now in the middle of a government shutdown, so there's just nothing normal about this whole year, and certainly not about the moment that we're in right here and now. I think what's most unrecognizable for me as your congressman is just the way Congress has engaged. That's my part of this, right? So the Constitution has 3 branches of government, and the founders put Article 1 right up front. Article 1 is the legislative branch. That's Congress. And I don't want to take you too deep into history here, but I think you remember that we fought a revolutionary war to get out from under a monarchy, a tyranny. And the way our founders thought that we would protect this new republic from ever becoming a tyranny again was to put the power in the people. It's right up front in the Constitution, we the people. And Article 1 of that we the people power is Congress. Congress is the one that has the power to do big things like, you know, levy taxes and decide how our money is spent. Congress is the one who has the power to actually impeach and remove other officials in other parts of the government. It's right there in the Constitution. Congress has the power to declare war. Congress is supposed to have the power over trade. And I think what's just really challenging for those of us that have, you know, that know the history and the civics and everything is that it's not working that way right now. We have a Congress that sort of doesn't want to stand as an independent branch of government. They sort of feel like they work for the president, and as a result of that, we're not doing the trade stuff. Donald Trump, whether you agree with him or not, is doing whatever he wants on trade. He's just doing tariffs and announcing them. He's doing executive orders by the hundreds. We've never seen so many of these executive orders from any president in history. And my colleagues in this Congress are comfortable with that. They're pretty comfortable with just yielding their Article 1 independent branch of government authority over to the president. And what that's done is it's set up this moment where there aren't the checks and balances that I feel like we need to see to have a healthy republic. It invites corruption, it invites abuses of power, things like deployments of the military as a police force, which was something our founders were passionately opposed to that. They didn't even want to have a standing army. They were so worried about abuse of the military against the citizens of this new republic, and yet we're in this moment where the military is doing things that, you know, never in my lifetime, rarely in the history of this country, have we ever seen. So I just want to get, I don't mean to be too provocative. If you don't share my politics, I'm not trying to pick a fight about any of this, but it is what's going on. I think we all know it, and it's something that we should acknowledge and consider as we have this conversation. Look, I'm going to keep trying to get things done no matter how chaotic things get. There may be new twists and turns that are not on my bingo card that are going to surprise me in the weeks and months ahead, and my job is to just try to keep the lights on and keep doing things for you in this community. I'm proud that we've been able to do that in some important ways despite a lot of chaos. I mean, I drive up Last Chance Parade every time I come here. I pretty much can't come here without talking about Last Chance Parade, right, Valerie? And, you know, we saw this coming. I've been in Congress now for 13 years. I knew this was going to be the most important infrastructure project in this part of my district when I got here. So we did something that I'm really proud of and that I think is paying dividends right now. We put together a facilitated stakeholder process where we got everybody in the room. The tribes, the timber company, the local government leaders, the parks, the state and federal interests, and the environmental community. We just worked through this problem of Highway 101 falling into the ocean and all of the economic and safety and other concerns it was addressing, and the huge costs of trying to band-aid our way through the problem of last chance grade. And we came up with this, really the only alternative that makes any sense. And it's big, and it's expensive, and it's going to take a while, but I find it pretty remarkable and awesome that all of the stakeholders are on board with moving forward together. I think that positions this project for success in really important ways that you don't see on big infrastructure projects in many other places. And it's because of the work of this community and many of you who stuck it out, had those tough conversations with your neighbors and other stakeholders, and you've gotten us to a place where I think in the years ahead we're going to solve that problem, and it's going to be a great thing. It's certainly a lot better than watching that highway fail and then being stuck with no solution. So pleased with the progress so far, work to do still, but I think it's an example of what we can do when we come together. We've been able to bring a bunch of community project funding. Every year for the past several years, I've been able to get some chunks of community project funding. We don't have, what they call earmarks in the past. We have kind of a variant of earmarks, much smaller. But we've been able to get chunks of, $500,000 for the sheriff and some money for a park in Crescent City, a youth center, other things. The Front Street project, we're continuing to support and seek funding. We will keep doing that. And I will just try to deliver for all of you as best I can during a really, really difficult political climate. So I think we'll just stop there, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. John, we have a remote mic, right? This is John Driscoll. He represents me in my Eureka office, does amazing work for me. We are still open during the government shutdown, so you see my staff here working. We're going to continue working, and if any of you are affected by the loss of services or things that are shut down or furloughs or anything else, we are here to try to help you as best we can. Sometimes we don't have as much information to share with you as we would like because it hasn't been as transparent as I would like. But we will try to help get all of us through this difficult government shutdown together. I don't know how long it's going to last. I know I was in Washington this week ready to do the work. We couldn't get our colleagues across the aisle to join us. They are drawing a pretty hard line in this moment. And they have now told us that they're not going to call Congress back to session next week either. So I'm disappointed in that. I really want us to get back to the table. And I'll just close with this. The reason that I am, in this moment, holding out is because we are on the verge of losing health care for a lot of people in this country and in my district. And you hear about the news coverage. The Democrats are fighting for this enhanced premium tax credit. That sounds so technical and so abstract. Let me tell you what it is. It is a subsidy for folks who don't have employer plans, who might be independent contractors or entrepreneurs or others. And it makes it affordable for them to go onto the exchange and if they qualify financially and afford their health premiums. Notices are going out right now to 37,000 people in my district alone, 37,000 families that will see their premiums double, in some cases triple, some will go up 600% because of the loss of that enhanced premium tax credit. It's a big deal. And it is worth fighting for because open enrollment on the exchange begins next month. So this is the moment to take a stand, I believe, for that. Now, I'm also fighting against Medicaid cuts and a bunch of other things that are going to make it really difficult to keep the lights on in rural health clinics and rural hospitals and for folks with disabilities and others. That's another part of this fight. We can talk about that more as we go forward, but I wanted to just kind of close with that and the government shutdown. And if any of you are impacted, please reach out to John in my Eureka office and we'll try to help. Okay, let's go to your questions.
Okay. Hi, I feel that once President Trump has control over the military, we're sunk. I don't know what we do about that, and I was wondering if you had any ways to combat that.
Yeah, I'm certainly disturbed by some of the things I've seen. I don't know what to think about this meeting last week where all of the generals and admirals were summoned to basically listen to a political speech by the president and the defense secretary. I'm not going to say Secretary of War because I think that's nonsense. But I find it deeply disturbing. And I'm guessing that a lot of those generals and admirals found it disturbing too. And so you asked, what are we going to do about it? The president is the commander-in-chief of the military, okay? That is his job. But the military takes an oath to the Constitution, not to Donald Trump. And so my hope is that those generals and admirals who are serious people, I mean, they have come through West Point and Annapolis and these academies that really do a wonderful job of training our military leaders. And it's not what Pete Hegseth says. It's not so they can just go, be warriors that scare the crap out of people all over the world. That's not what generals and admirals are trained to do. They are trained to be really thoughtful leaders. And they know the limits of their power. And so, yes, Donald Trump is the commander-in-chief. But if he issues orders to them that are illegal or unconstitutional, their oath is to ask him to reframe those orders so that they can follow them, not to do things that are illegal. So I still have a lot of hope and faith in the institution of our military and the oath that they take. But look, eyes wide open, right? Because we're seeing things that many of us never thought we'd see in the United States, and that's one of the most troubling. We'll try to just get through as much of the room as we can. John's going to do that for me.
Oh, okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Holly. I also have taken an oath to the Constitution for my work, so I know what that means. I know what that means.
Great. What do you do?
I don't always know. I'm an attorney.
Okay.
And I don't always know what all the answers are. But thank you for bringing that up and continuing to remind us all of that. I have several concerns, and then I'm going to end with a question. I have concerns about timber and mining opening out our public and tribal lands here in this region. Highly concerned. And I'm concerned furlough, the government shutdown is leaving essential workers open, and some of those people are here just to issue permits instead of actually open access to public lands for our use, but for commercial use only. I'm concerned about the trust responsibility that is owed to tribes and that being undercut by several different reasons. I do work for a tribe, so I'm putting that out there. It will and could impact me at some point soon, financially, but also emotionally. I actually also feel like let's just go ahead and offer health to all. If you're going to get accused for it, let's do it. I mean, but the question that I want to ask you to research and your team to research, because quite frankly I'm scared to research it, is I would love to do a FOIA request, and this is what I want to know. I want to know the number of ICE agents that have been hired and retained by month in 2025 and by region. And I would like to know what their training schedule is and their training content.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. I don't have the answer to that specific question off the top of my head, but what I can tell you is that in the latest budget that was pushed through, it was a very partisan budget, I voted against it, we gave ICE a budget that is bigger than the entire defense budget for most European countries. So, what I will tell you about that is I will acknowledge that there was a problem at our southern border, okay? And I will own the fact that I think my party did a pretty lousy job of talking about it and doing something about it. I'm going to own that. And I'm grateful in a sense that we have restored order at the border. You have to have orderly migration and orderly border crossings, and that shouldn't be a controversial thing to stay. But what we are seeing some of these ICE agents do should also disturb all of us. This is so aggressive and so almost unrecognizable in this country. The masks, the unmarked cars, the disappearing of people, the sending folks to like foreign countries that don't have any human rights, that have these torture prisons and absolute no due process. This is disturbing and un-American, I believe, in a profound way. And I worry, when you give an agency like that, when you build up this culture, some of the recruiting advertisements I'm seeing for ICE and for Homeland Security just kind of give you chills. It's like they're trying to find people that want to hurt people. They're trying to find people that are thugs, and they're trying to kind of build up this culture, and they've given them this enormous budget. And when you do that, it's kind of hard to unwind that. It's kind of hard to, you create a little bit of a monster there. So I am deeply concerned about that, and I think that the real sort of where this goes, how it ends, I worry that, like in Portland and some of these other places, the objective is not to bring peace. The objective is to pick a fight. And where that goes with a president like this who wants to stretch the boundaries of his authorities is he probably uses more of the military in different ways. And I see this in the context of a midterm election that is now 15 months away, one where I think this president knows that probably Democrats are on track to win the House back. I'm not just saying that as a Democrat. I think history and polling and everything else would suggest Democrats are on track to win the House back. And so I find it disturbing when you put all of these things together that we could be in a situation where he's trying to set up the pretext for either not allowing the election or not acknowledging the results of the election. And now you're deeply into an authoritarian, un-American scenario. So I'm worried about ICE. ICE is one of several sort of institutional pressure points that I think are really straining our democracy and challenging all of us. I am all for protesting and standing up and going through the courts and through peaceful protests against ICE, but we've got to all be very thoughtful. If ICE comes into this community to do things that we disagree with, I hope you will reach out to my office and we'll just try to keep calm, but to also stand up for our community and for our values and for our Constitution. And we've just got to be smart about it, because if folks take the bait and respond with violence, we're going to see troops in the street and martial law and things that take us deeper into this constitutional crisis, and I don't want to see that. Mm-hmm. Well, John's going to bring the mic around. Sorry.
Hello, sir. As somebody that here, we're not going to solve all the world's problems today, but locally, one of the problems that we have is getting health care and qualified doctors, and having talked with some of them, Del Norte experiences a higher disproportionately population of homelessness, and some of those well-known subjects with mental health issues make for a really uncomfortable experience from our healthcare providers. And as somebody that hasn't been able to see a doctor in 3 years because nobody is in our VA network for 100% disabled veteran here, how do we, A, open up those lines, because I'm not the only veteran that can't get support here, but B, what are we going to do to combat the homelessness that's starting to hide up in our area?
Yeah, thank you. It's a really important question. I appreciate it. So first, thank you for your service, and I want to see you get the VA care that you deserve. That's a commitment that we make to our veterans, that we have to keep faith. It's tricky in the rural parts of my district. I have found this recruitment and retention problem to be pretty universal in all of the rural parts of my district. So it's about to get harder, I think, with some of the cuts, and I actually think there is an agenda afoot to try to privatize the VA, which could make it even worse. So I oppose that. I want you to know that. What I have tried to do is to provide some financial incentives for rural VA clinics to help them. Right now, it's sort of the opposite. All the incentives are for the providers in the VA to maybe do some training in rural areas and then get the heck out and go to places where they can make more money. We've got to flip that around because we have an acute need. And I know that the VA clinics in my district have just been a revolving door with vacancies and borrowing temporary employees from other parts of the state continuously in just a fire drill, and that spills out into the kind of care you get, and that should be unacceptable to all of us. So I'm going to keep pushing that legislation to create higher reimbursement rates and financial incentives for rural VA care. I've had bipartisan support for that, by the way, so it's not a crazy idea. It's something that we might be able to enact, and I think it would make a huge difference. But while we do that, I'll keep fighting to oppose privatization and other things that could further erode VA healthcare. Okay.
Thank you. This is kind of a follow-up question on the veterans medical. Could you explain how the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act has been attacked by the GOP, and how that might be a foundation of the attack on medical in this country?
Can you elaborate a little on that? I want to follow your question.
The medical, I'll just read this.
Yeah.
The Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, IMTALA,
Yeah, tell me.
1986, was signed by President Reagan, the Republican administration. And it's the defunding of that act by the GOP that's causing the problems, the increase in, our costs and so on. I don't know how that affects the veterans, but if you could, talk a little bit about that and what you know about I'm going to call it the defunding of that act.
Yeah, we're seeing basically defunding of the entire healthcare infrastructure from Medicaid. By the way, Medicare is going to take a hit because of the legislation that was passed earlier this year. When you run up trillions of dollars in debt and increase the deficit, there are automatic provisions in federal law that start cutting into Medicare. So that is going to be to the tune of about $500 or $600 billion. It will be the biggest cut to Medicare we have ever seen. All of this is connected, The notion that, we're putting work requirements over here for Medicaid and it won't affect veterans or it won't affect people with employer plans. The entire healthcare system, there's connective tissue. It all works together, and so you are affected whether you know it or not. Your veteran care will suffer if you are shutting down rural clinics and if providers are leaving town. And if you don't have first responders suddenly become primary caregivers in a totally broken, dysfunctional healthcare system. So I think we've got to look at all of it pretty holistically. I will follow up more on EMTALA and find out, how those cuts translate to veterans care. But I oppose the cuts, and I'll keep trying to fully fund all of this. I mean, if anything, we need to do more on healthcare in this moment. And we're going in the wrong direction. So I just think it's one of many ways in which I sort of marvel that the big legislation that was passed under this administration, this Congress, was to slash health care and to fund trillions of dollars of tax cuts for people who don't need it, for the wealthiest Americans and billionaires and corporations. And I just find that a betrayal of unthinkable proportions. We're going to fight back against that, and we'll see how the election goes, but I'm going to keep pushing back in every way I can. Hi.
So what worries me is that I'm looking at a long-range thing of somebody who's trying to take over our democracy. And when I look at that, I was listening to you talk about the generals and how, they work for the American people. So does DOJ.
Yeah.
So does the Supreme Court.
Yeah. You're right.
And yet, somehow, they don't.
Yeah.
They work for the president.
Yeah.
This is really scary. What I think we need from you is to hold the line.
Mm-hmm.
We have to fight against it. And we're looking at a long-range thing.
Yeah.
We're looking at the law loss of our whole democracy and going to be like a third world country. Now, my question is, I am really curious about the gerrymandering.
Okay, yeah.
Can you explain that?
Can I explain the gerrymandering? Yeah, that's a subject that we should talk about. Prop 50 is, of course, on the ballot. So, let me just put this down. I'll give you my take on it. I hate political gerrymandering like the plague. I think it's an awful, awful thing, and that's why back when we passed the initiative that gave California independent redistricting, I went against my own party and supported it. So I've just always thought that partisan gerrymandering is so anti-democratic, it's the worst, right? And so I've been really proud of California's independent redistricting process. Nothing's perfect, of course, and you know, people sort of look at the maps in California and they may call them gerrymandered. They're really the opposite of gerrymandered. They went through a very transparent process where the whole world was watching while these commissioners kind of struggled with, you know, which communities to keep intact and how to draw these lines, because their job with congressional districts is to come up with an equal number of congressional districts that each have about 750,000 people. And that means some pretty remote, low-populated rural areas are going to be conjoined with some more urban areas, and you know, some are going to find that controversial. But I think they did a really thoughtful job, and they did such a beautiful job with my district. I love every part of it. So I was very happy with that. But look, fast forward to 2025. The Republican leadership in Washington sees it differently. They've got power right now. They have power in the state legislatures. They have governor's houses in a bunch of these states. And to them, you know, power should just be used and weaponized. And that's why, you know, they've done something that you're not supposed to do. Mid-decade redistricting. It's supposed to happen every 10 years following the census. The next census doesn't happen until 5 years from now. But 2 years ago, they did a mid-decade redistricting in North Carolina, a state which, if you look at how the elections have gone statewide, North Carolina, we call it a purple state, but all the statewide officials in North Carolina are Democrats. North Carolina is a lot more blue than people think. And so I think the Republicans saw that as a threat. And so they did a mid-decade redistricting that took out 3 House members from North Carolina last year. You know how the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats in the House right now? 3 seats. So that mid-decade redistricting in North Carolina is the reason that Mike Johnson is Speaker of the House today and not Hakeem Jeffries. And I think the kind of power-focused folks in the Republican Party said, let's do more of that. Because they're worried about this coming midterm election. They know Democrats are on track to win. So they look at the states where they can just sort of call up the governor, call up the state legislators, and say, do this. And that's why it happened in Texas. And they're gonna try to push out 5 Democrats in Texas. They just probably took out 1 Democrat in Missouri. They're going to try to do it in Indiana and Ohio and Kansas, potentially Florida. And so, the question for California is, do we still try to be purists in support of independent redistricting while all of this is happening and California's voice in Congress is being diminished by all of this? Or do we stand up and fight back? And that where I come down on this, and where I think a lot of people are coming down, is that we still support independent redistricting. But in this moment, we're not going to die on Purity Hill. We're going to fight back. So, I'm all for Prop 50. I hope it passes. And, I feel strongly enough about it that I've sort of agreed to this redrawn map. That this is unlike anything we've ever seen. Redistricting usually is something that happens in a back room, and then, you sort of find out about it months later. Where have they drawn me into? This time the map is actually going on the ballot. You will all see exactly what the map is. The map has me taking on this vast, beautiful stretch of California across the entire North State, all the way to Nevada. It's something that I'm willing to do. It's a big district. It's going to be a challenge for me. I know that. But I'll give it my best, and I'll take one for the team, because I think this is a moment where democracy is at stake, and we need to do that.
I disagree with you completely on Prop 50.
Okay.
As I look at it, one of the problems we have is it was not transparent. Those maps, we get a chance to vote on, but they were drawn up in a back room in secret.
Yeah.
Not like the 35,000 Californians that had the opportunity to participate in the independent commission when they did their districts. Right now, I know your district is being cut off. Your district will take in the coast. It'll take in Fort Bragg, but yet it doesn't take in Ukiah. You're splitting it. And if you look at the requirements that are in the California Constitution, it tells us that certain requirements are there. The only requirement that is met on these new maps is the number of people. How does someone from Marin, and this is my question to you, when I have questions about the things that you haven't done and have done, last chance grade, your other 10 years, you know, I've been told by other people, foreign countries are willing to come in and take care of last chance grade and have it done in 5 years. But we're looking at 1935. It took you 10 years to get a group together just to go through it. To me, good intentions are not what counts. What counts are good results. And I don't see that. I see that here in Del Norte, that our offshore fisheries are in decline because of your role on the NOAA and some of the rules and regulations on tourist states has declined. We see our agriculture. So we also see that the tribal people down in the Potter Valley, the tribal
Okay. So I'm going to try to, you got a bunch of pieces to that question. I'm going to try to unpack. If I forget part of it, let me know. Remind me, okay? But I'm going to try to get to it because I want to have a conversation with you, sir. So Prop 50, you're right. I mean, that map was drawn up like by folks in a room, but is being presented to voters for their approval. It is partisan. It is a response to what's happening in Texas and Missouri and Kansas. It is. I am agreeing with you. I am agreeing with you that that's what it is. We may disagree on how we should vote on it, but I'm agreeing with you that it is partisan. So I can't lie. I mean, that's what Prop 50 is. It's a Democratic pushback against this Republican power play in other states. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to try to get to as much of the rest of your questions as you can. So you, again, remind me if I miss anything, but you brought up sort of the 10-year plus that it's taken to be where we are in last chance grade. And man, if there's a foreign country that would have come in and solved that problem in a way that this community would support, I wish I knew about that. I kind of find it hard to believe there's a business model for like a Saudi wealth fund or some multinational corporation to come in and make a bunch of money here in Del Norte County by building a tunnel or a fix to last chance grade. To me, this is one of those classic examples of the only way you're going to get this solved is the government. And so, you know, if there is some private sector foreign country, bring it to me. I'm serious. Bring it to me. I'm genuinely curious. I just have never heard of anything like that that would actually work in a place like this. I don't think the economics lend themselves to it because there's no way they can monetize it. There's no way they could actually make it pencil out. You asked about fisheries. Okay, so offshore. So you're talking about the rockfish or? Absolutely. Okay, so look, I've been as frustrated as you that the quillback situation had us hung up for a couple of years. What have I been doing during that time? I've been fighting for the survey data to show that there are more quillback than the fishery regulators thought, and it took too long, but we are finally back. We are reopened, and I feel good about that. To me, To me, that's a cautionary tale, though, about what happens when you defund and underappreciate the science and the research and the monitoring that is necessary. Because the history of fisheries in this country is that when you do not have well-managed, well-regulated fisheries supported by science and surveys and stock assessments, all these not very glamorous things that we got to do, when you don't do that, you're going to overfish them and crash them. That is just the history that's played out over and over again from the cod of New England to the other fisheries around this country. We don't want that here in the north coast of California. We want to have sustainable fisheries. I'm not thrilled about how long it took to get the quillback thing solved, but I am happy that we finally have the stock assessments, and I hope all of us will work together to continue appreciating research and data, and the folks that do this work, they're not faceless bureaucrats. They're actually there to do this so that people can go out and make a living on the water and catch fish, and we can have a healthy, sustainable resource economy. That's what I hope to see.
I only want to comment about Prop 50.
Okay.
Unlike Texas and the rest of these red states
Yeah.
that are just shoving it down the throat of the citizens, the state of California put it on a ballot, so we all get to choose.
Where you going? Okay, we go. John forgot that he's in charge of this.
Okay, this may be kind of an outlier, but this idea has been rattling around in my mind and several others, is the United States government is not spending our taxpayer money responsibly, an example being that crazy ice budget. And this is a radical idea. What do you think about a tax revolt?
Yeah.
Tax revolt.
Sort of no taxation without representation. I have heard that somewhere before. I'm trying to remember. Look, what I think about it, I started hearing about this a few months ago, and I was fairly dismissive because, just logistically, legally, there's no way to do it. Okay, our taxes are collected directly by the federal government. They don't pass through the state of California. So even if the state of California wanted to declare some tax autonomy or a holiday or anything else, there's no mechanism for doing it. And I don't want to see people do something that gets them in trouble with the IRS or with federal law. I would never advise anyone to withhold your taxes because I think you're going to find yourself in real trouble. Although there's no one at the IRS working anymore. So maybe you'll get away with it, I don't know. But don't take my advice on this. But I'll tell you what's been going on in recent weeks, and it's, especially with this shutdown, I just almost can't recognize our country in some of this stuff, with the administration rolling out a list of infrastructure projects that are cut specifically in Democratic states by design to try to literally create all this pain and pressure points in a purely political manner. We've been through government shutdowns with Democrats and Republicans. I mean, this is my third as your representative in Congress. We have never seen just a partisan weaponization of a shutdown and using it as an excuse to punish political adversaries. And that's so much about what's going on in all this stuff. Punish your political adversaries. It's like this retribution tour that is purely about tribal partisan politics. And you begin to feel, as a Californian, that my country is at war with me somehow. I hope, believe me, I don't want to see that. But, the idea at some point, if this president continues down that path and just starts saying, you're no longer going to get your social services, I'm just going to single you out because I don't like you. That's going to force a reckoning of some kind, and I don't know where it goes. I mean, the last time that happened, it wasn't pretty. I don't want to see our country come to actual conflict. but it's totally untenable. It's unsustainable. You cannot have politics like this that continue, and then, okay, we get a Democrat president in 2028, and they bring out their retribution list and start sticking it to red communities and red states. I don't want that either. I mean, when a hurricane or a natural disaster hits Florida or the Gulf Coast, I want to have their back. They are my fellow Americans. And we've got to reconnect with that, right? So, look, I think you know how I feel about this president and the way he's operating and the way he's so cruel and vindictive and partisan and political in all of these tactics. But we've got to work through this and find a way to get to a better place. We've just got to be better than that as a country. Can't hear you.
So, thanks. Hi, I'm Alicia Williams. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming and not canceling this time. I was a little worried because the government shut down, you weren't going to show up.
Yeah.
We're a historically neglected county. It's a really, really sad story up here. There's tons of exploitation, tons of corruption. There's a bunch of grant fraud going on. So I have details in the 6-page letter I gave you. I would like you to follow up. We really need your help. We have the cartel presence for at least 3 decades from Pelican Bay Prison. We have high-level gang members that brought the cartel. They're involved in the drug and human trafficking, the missing and murdered indigenous. Our law enforcement, they're not supported out here. They are continually traumatized, they're not supported, and they are not funded, and they are, just no compassion for them whatsoever. Our Sheriff Scott, he's a good guy, he needs help. I need you to coordinate the DEA and all that task force in order to finally address these concerns. We also need the medical providers here to stop prescribing opioids. They are still prescribing opioids like nobody's business. Okay, we have just so many problems. Now, what I want to circle back to is when Chris Strong had he just brought up the taxable. So the way that we taxable, I appreciate you guys.
Go ahead, Alicia. Just wrap it up. Yeah.
The way that we tax remote is through our Congress. Stop subsidizing industry, okay? Stop creating false markets. Stop propping up false markets with our tax dollars. Okay. Give that tax dollar to us. So here's an example. The medical, stop funding the insurance, stop requiring the employers to have their insurance mandate, and give that as a stipend.
So, Alicia. Let Andy hold the mic. We've learned through painful experience that he needs to hold the
So
mic.
you take the subsidies that are mandated by employers to go to insurance premiums, okay? Like UHC, United Healthcare, that restricts providers so that they don't repair. You give that as a stipend to the employee to use on healthcare. And then...
All right. Alicia, let me jump in. I appreciate your passion. I have a 6-page white paper from you up here that I promise we're going to take a look at. And look, I appreciate your passion, so I'm going to give you a lot of credit for coming here with your concerns and your questions. I will take a look, and a couple of the points that you raised, I want to support your sheriff. I've done my best to get grant funding and support your sheriff. If there are cartel activities up here that I can be helpful in addressing, no one wants to see that. I take the MMIP crisis very seriously, and so I'm very interested in partnering with law enforcement and tribes and everyone in the community to do more and to do better on that front. So what I will promise you is that I will take a look at your concerns. You've identified a few things that are certainly priorities for me that I will work on, and I'll do my best. Gentleman right here. Okay, let me get him around.
Okay.
Blame him. I'm not in charge of the microphone.
It's hard for me to even say this. First of all, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. It gives me strength to know that you're in a position of leadership and representing me. I guess my question is, of all the horrors that are happening right now, for me personally, I can't stand the fact that people are being pulled off the street because of the color of their skin. And I would sincerely like to know if you know there's something that I can personally do. I just can't stand by and do nothing and go about my day and go out to dinner and think everything's lovely. It's not lovely. And I feel like I come from a long, as all these people, everyone in this room, regardless of your politics, I come from a long line of people who fought for the right for people to be here of all colors and races, and I just want to know, what can I do? Because it is something I can't live with doing nothing.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Well, look, I appreciate the compassion that you are expressing right now, and one of the things that gives me hope in this really difficult and dark moment is that I'm hearing more and more of that from people. I think as we see these images that are like unrecognizable in our country, that are so upsetting at a human level, people are sort of rediscovering their humanity, I think, in this moment. So what can you do about it? Just be with other people, maybe show up at that October 18th protest. I think that stuff matters, right? I think if we're experiencing a march toward authoritarianism and a totalitarian kind of disregard of the Constitution and due process and other core values, public opinion has to start weighing in. I mean, Abraham Lincoln said public opinion is the most powerful thing. With it, everything is possible. Without it, nothing is possible. And I think that the American public, for some period of months, was a little bit stunned and confused and didn't really know what to make of this moment. I am seeing an awakening right now. Let's be part of that. Let's keep it peaceful, but let's absolutely make it very clear that as Americans, we don't stand for that.
My name's Diana. My husband and I work at a local food pantry. And up to recently, we had maybe 30 people show up. Now it's doubled. 60 people have shown up. It'll probably increase even more so with the shutdown. However, we used to get a large shipment from Santa Rosa, but the funds for Feeding America has dried up. And that came every other month. Now it's maybe 2 months with smaller shipments. Thus, a coworker, Jim, and myself are buying the much-needed food. And I don't see it stopping with the number of people. And people feel that it's just the homeless. No. A lot of people are homeless, but a lot of people are struggling in a house to make cost of living, house payments, and food. They need assistance.
First, thank you. I want to thank you and anyone else who's working at food banks or Meals on Wheels or any of these wonderful programs. You made a very important point. And I sort of saw this very graphically during the pandemic. I visited some local food banks and the lines were just around the block. Most people assume that food banks are for people who are homeless or just like extremely on the hard edge of poverty, and it's not. It is a lot of working families and folks that are just struggling to get by. So thank you for making that point. Thank you for doing what you can. With this chaos right now in Washington, federal support for SNAP and for so many of these Lifeline programs is going to be in jeopardy. We aren't going to have the kind of farm bill we used to have, where we had been making some progress in recent years on nutrition programs. We're going the wrong direction right now. So I think the state of California hopefully will be in a position to try to backfill, but all of us in this community, if you can, are going to need to be part of that. Most of our food banks are supported by philanthropic contributions as well. It's not all government funding. So please do support your local food bank. I will do what I can to navigate the politics of the federal level, try to get it back on the rails, and I would urge you to reach out to your state representatives too and ask for their help in backfilling while we try to get the federal piece of it back in place. But thank you for what you do.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Steinreich, a member of Holiday Nation. I want to know what I can do as an individual here. You describe our Congress as GOP strong.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with the industrial military complex that controls our country. I'm sick and tired of our military equipment bombing these countries around the world. Trump has made these deals with these various international countries that we have nothing to do with. But they control oil. They control the things that he needs, what he wants to do personally. His Bitcoin is a bunch of BS. There's no way in hell anyone should be making money off of that while they're president. But this man does not give a hoot. What can I do as a member here in Delaware County, striving to make our community the best it can be to fight against this? It makes me sick. I have a hard time sleeping at night thinking about what's going on in Gaza and all over everywhere with these bombs that we made. They're American made. Oh yeah, buy American made, man. Here, go ahead, take this American made bomb. It's great, it's the best. But you know what? That's not what we're made for. That's not democracy. That's not what we do around the world. We are hated around the country, world, by just because we're Americans, and we have nothing to do with the damn thing. Not one thing. And I don't understand what you guys can do, what we can do to stop this bullshit.
Yeah. That was very well said. I appreciate it. And I don't disagree with the word you ended on either. That's a pretty apt description of this moment and what seems like just really warped priorities. So, there's a lot in what you just laid out, but it comes down to what can I do? I think that's what you were asking. And I think whether you're concerned about the horrific tragedy of Gaza, and gosh, I hope we're on the verge of a deal that will finally end that and result in a Palestinian state and long-term peace in the region. We will see. I support that. I want to see that, this war has gone on far too long. It's been terrible, and you're right. Our country has responsibility for some of that. We have failed to use our leverage and our relationship in a way that ended that conflict. It should have ended long ago. But we're also in a moment where, we have this Secretary of Defense renaming his agency the Secretary of War. That's got to be really galling for you. While shutting down all of our soft power around the world, this to me is almost just as disturbing. Because, when you talk about global influence and protecting America's interests and national security, you don't always have to do that with guns and tanks and wars. I mean, you can do that with goodwill, with diplomacy, with food programs, with aid, with educating people. And I think most generals would back me up on that. So that's something we're going to have to fight for in this moment, and we're going to have to get it right. But the bottom line of what you could do, which was your question, let's recognize that all of these things are connected. I try not to draw too many parallels to the 1930s Germany. That's dark stuff. But if you know your history, you kind of can't look away, because there are too many echoes right now in what we see. And we know that there was a famous person who wrote in the aftermath of that terrible tragedy that I believe it was sort of first they came for the labor unions, and I was not a unionist, and so I did nothing. Then they came for the communists, then they came for the Jews, and then when they finally came for me, there was nobody left to stand for me. So we're all in it together. And that's why, whether it is our foreign policy, or whether it is our food programs, or any other aspect of this deep dysfunction and this authoritarianism and ICE and all these other things, I urge you to be part of that October 18th awakening, and let's see where it goes. Keep it peaceful, but that's my answer to you. Be part of that. Be part of that.
So, I retired after 22 years of service to this country in the United States Navy. And what's happening with our military currently is really concerning to me.
Yeah.
So I have a two-part question for you.
Okay.
given your strong record of advocating for transparency and ethical governance, how concerned are you about Secretary Hex's proposed rollback of whistleblower protections and expanded commander authority over internal complaints within the military? Right. Many service members see these as essential checks against abuse of power. Right. And I know many current serving females are very scared because we already have a large portion of sexual assault, military sexual assault, that goes unchecked. The second part, in light of Secretary Hex's recent speech reforming the Pentagon as a War Department with more aggressive and less constrained posture, what role do you believe Congress must play to ensure civilian oversight, accountability, and adherence to international law as these cultural and doctrinal shifts take hold?
Wow, that's a great question. Thank you. Thank you for your service and for that profoundly important question. Let me kind of start at the end about these, you refer to them as doctrinal shifts. And you're right, we have this, self-proclaimed Secretary of War, and, I think this guy's just got like a testosterone problem or something. I don't know what's wrong with him. But all he can talk about is pounding his chest and being a tough guy and doing push-ups and, trying to set fitness tests for like everybody in the entire military. They've got to pass a male fitness test. I mean, this is just ridiculous. So, but the doctrinal shifts, he's also suggested that maybe we don't have to comply with the Geneva Convention. Maybe we don't have to comply with, treaties and international laws. And this begins to be something that's deeply disturbing. It's going to be terrible for our stature on the global stage. He's going to isolate the United States in ways that are very bad for our national security interests, because you can't go it alone in today's world. You need allies, you need goodwill, you need friends. And some of this stuff is just taking us in the wrong direction. He doesn't believe in soft power. He believes in like push-ups and tattoos, as far as I can tell. So I find it deeply disturbing. And his stuff on gender, and you asked about the chain of command and sexual assault. This has been a problem in the military for a long time. We've made tremendous progress against institutional resistance the whole way, and he seems to be trying to just undo all of that. It's going to make it very hard to have women in the military. It's going to just be very hard to have regular people in the military. Back to the recruiting messages and other things, he seems to want to just find people that have anger management problems and want to hurt other people to be in the military and do a bunch of push-ups. And I don't support that. I think that's kind of unrecognized. I don't think the American people are down with that either. So I hope that a lot of service members are going to speak up. You asked about the inspector generals. That's the other deeply disturbing thing. Guys, he tells our generals and admirals that the enemy is within. And Trump says they're going to start using the military to train in American cities on civilians. I mean, come on, if this doesn't give you chills and disturb you, you're just not paying attention, folks. But he seems to think that the enemy is also within the military, because he's eliminating inspectors general, which root out corruption and misconduct and abuses of power. He doesn't want, any warriors to ever be held accountable for the war crimes that they implement. In fact, Pete Hegseth kind of, won his claim to fame by exonerating some members of the military who had committed heinous atrocities. Got them pardoned. So that's sort of the mentality that this guy has. And he's doing these lie detectors. For like all those generals and admirals are sitting there thinking, gosh, am I going to be put through a lie detector? Am I going to be asked what I think of this crazy speech I'm listening to? The chilling effect that has. And to then have Donald Trump get up and joke about firing them all if they disagree with him. Ha ha, right? Really funny. I mentioned earlier that, one of the things that we count on in this moment to like preserve the constitutional order are these generals and admirals taking their oath to the Constitution and not to Donald Trump? Well, I think Trump is smart enough to understand that too, and that's why he got them all in a room and kind of planted that seed that if you're not down with anything I tell you to do, you will be fired. That's deeply, deeply disturbing. I've never seen anything like that in the United States of America. So I thank you for speaking up, for asking a great question. I think you flagged some really important pieces of this. Congress has a huge role to play in all of it. We will, Article 1 branch, right? We're supposed to set many of these policies, not sit back and watch while Pete Hegseth just sort of articulates. So, elections matter, and my hope is that we can begin to restore some checks and balances and sanity after the next election.
Hi. First of all, I just want to say thank you for coming all the way up to Del Mar County. I spend time advocating for agriculture in Washington, D.C. and here in California, and unfortunately, I've never been able to get an appointment with your office, so sincerely thank you for being here.
Of course.
One of my biggest concerns with Prop 50 is that it drowns out rural voices.
Yes.
So our voices will be drowned out by those that are in the Bay Area. I think my second concern is, I spend a lot of time advocating for agriculture. There's a lot of female farmers like myself that are really struggling to hang on to generational farms. And I don't know you, but you have a reputation of being really anti-agriculture. And I would like to work with you and help family farms so we can stay in business. And I think those are just my main concerns, is about rural voices and making sure agriculture is heard in Northern California.
I appreciate the question. So thank you. And I guess I would say first on the agriculture thing. I hope you talk to some different people before judging my reputation on agriculture. I've got plenty of.
Open mind, that's why.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It's okay. It's all right. But I certainly value local food systems. I work with my local ranchers and farmers throughout my district, and I want to support them. I support the Farm Bill programs that are for specialty crops, for organics, for the other things that serve the kind of agriculture that I have in my district that I really appreciate and do support. Now, what I have sometimes, where I have found myself on the other side of some farm bureaus and things like that, is the big Central Valley industrial agriculture that kind of wants to take all the water out of our North Coast rivers and crush our salmon runs and do some things that I got to stand up against. I got to represent the interests of the coastal communities and the tribes and the fishing interests that I represent. So I'm not going to apologize for that, but I'm going to always try to appreciate agriculture, and I will engage with anyone who is in that very, very important field. In terms of rural voices being drowned out, the real challenge is that it's hard to draw a congressional district with 750,000 people and make it all rural. I mean, it's just the math. You would have the largest, most meandering, rural thing, and I think that would be really tough for somebody to serve you very well and to do a good job. So I take the rural parts of my district very seriously. I show up, I listen, I promise I will continue doing that. We may not always agree, but I tend to believe that this kind of rural-urban dichotomy, sometimes it's suggested as if we're like different species, we're on different planets, we have nothing in common. I think we actually can do better than that. And so I know I'm closer to the urban side of my district. I live down in Marin, but man, I love it up here. And I love the communities, and I love the resources, and I love the natural resource economy, and I love the challenge of the tribes and everything else that make this district so unique and so special. And I'm totally committed to listening to people and solving problems and getting solutions to this part of my district. In some ways, this part of my district needs me more than the folks down in the more affluent suburban parts of my district. So I end up spending kind of a disproportionate amount of time here, and that's okay, because that is what's needed. So, look, I'm one member of Congress. I'll just do my best to make sure that I'm not leaving out rural voices or agricultural voices or anyone else. And if you ever want to engage with me or my staff, the door is open. I'm ready to do it. Okay?
Congressman, I think we have time for
Two more questions.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Norma Williams, and I, just by looking over my phone here, I noticed breaking news from CNN as well as NBC and MSNBC that Trump is sending 300 California National Guard members to Oregon. Governor Newsom says after Judge Hawes planned to deploy troops, our governor does intend to sue over the deployment.
Wow.
So I'm just basically wanting to know your comment. But I do want to make this one comment myself. My father, who was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and yes, Puerto Rico is part of the United States. Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
This is not what my father fought in the Korean War for. He fought against tyrannies, against fascism, against the North Koreans in the Korean War. This is fascism. I'd like to know what your comment is on this latest news. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Gosh, I was having such a good day until you share that with me. Look, last night, a federal district court enjoined Donald Trump from mobilizing the Oregon National Guard over the objection of the governor of Oregon to do this policing activity in Portland, which is a total, fake emergency, like a textbook fake emergency. There is no crisis in the streets of Portland, Oregon right now. This was a test of the limits of Donald Trump's power, and an Oregon court told him, no, you cannot do that in Oregon. And so I'm speculating here because I haven't read the story, but it sounds like he's done a little end round and grabbed the California National Guard to try to use them over the objection of our governor, right, to go deploy them in Portland. I am a lawyer, and I find it hard to believe that that's going to stand because we already have a court order that came a little bit too late for Los Angeles, telling Donald Trump that he was not supposed to have done what he did, but he'd already done it by the time that that order came out. So the idea that now, in the face of an order in Oregon, he's able to reactivate California's National Guard, send them to Oregon, I mean, this is just the impunity. This guy is really off the rails. So I think we're going to get a court decision. I bet you that this time next week we have a court order telling him you can't do that. Now, will he then go and grab the state of Idaho's National Guard? Who knows? But until this guy starts seeing pushback from the other institutions of our government, from the courts, from civil society, from public opinion, from the Congress, the Article 1 branch that's supposed to have more power than him, but you would never know it looking at America today. That's what it's going to take to end this wild ride of authoritarianism. And I thank you for the breaking news. I will go and get on top of it. And what my colleagues and I typically do in these situations, we sometimes don't have standing to actually file litigation on our own. Because we're in the minority party right now in Washington, we can't do much legislatively. They won't let us. They're too preoccupied trying to hide the Epstein files right now to allow Congress to do much of anything else. But what we can do is file amicus briefs and write letters of support and other things, and I will do that. Thank you for the news. You get the final word, I think.
Two things. First of all, I'm a veteran who uses the Brookings VA clinic. I know what's being hit hard by a lack of staff and all that, first of all. Secondly, I moved up there because of all the nice environment and all of that.
Yeah.
And now I hear all these reports about Trump wants to sell off our national forest. Sell off, I know how much other things. Massive cuts to the Park Service, massive cuts to the Forest Service and staff and all that. And what is going to happen to all this? It's all going to turn into strip mines and clear cuts?
Yeah. Thank you, but that's a really important question. I'm so glad that you asked, because obviously with so many wonderful public lands around us here in Del Norte County, the National Forest, the park, we've got BLM lands near here that are incredibly important, with our beautiful coast out here, which is also a federal resource that is part of what you just asked about. We are facing a policy agenda that's unlike anything I have ever seen. I've had a chance to ask the Secretary of Interior about this in committee, because I'm the ranking Democrat of the Natural Resources Committee, and thank you. We saw something that was really controversial, an attempt legislatively to literally sell off millions and millions of acres of public lands. And thankfully there was enough of a backlash, and one of my Republican colleagues, Ryan Zinke from Montana, joined with Democrats, and we pushed back, and there was some backlash in the Senate, and we were able to defeat that for now, but it is not gone. There is still a lot of folks in this White House that want to sell off millions and millions of acres of public land. Some of the things they want to do with it just smack of corruption, and they're so controversial. They are in with some of these crypto folks that want to build like crypto cities, new cities. It's really weird, and you know, all of it is with the billionaire class and all of the crazy ideas that they have. So this is a moment where we really need to, I think, stand up for our public lands. We probably have some hunters and fishermen in this room, I'm guessing, and you know, this is really encouraging that when we saw that legislation moving forward, a bunch of Republican hunters and fishermen cried foul. They're like, no, do not do that. So thank you. Whether you agree with me politically or not, if you're someone that uses our public lands, that values public access, that doesn't want to have to pay some hedge fund every time you go hunting or fishing, we need to work together on this, folks. We have common cause on this issue. Our Secretary of Interior, of course, is a billionaire. I mean, this is like government by billionaires these days. It's unrecognizable. But he has said things where he believes that we could solve the national debt. And you know, we've got many trillions of dollars in national debt, a lot of it held by foreign countries. He thinks we could solve the national debt by monetizing our public lands, by literally using it as collateral. And you know, just sort of think that one through. What does that look like? We're going to now give, like China, some sort of security interest in the Six Rivers National Forest? Or, you know, there's no way to do that without really compromising core American values in a way that's deeply unthinkable, I think. The premise of public lands, people like Teddy Roosevelt and Gifford Pinchot and others years ago who kind of set us on this path, was to preserve them better than they were inherited for future generations, an intergenerational trust. And I think we're in a moment right now where this administration doesn't think about future generations. They think about like next month's profit and loss statement for their corporate billionaire friends. Public lands is like the poster child for this really short-sighted, reckless vulture capitalism, honestly, that I think has just gone too far. So I think we're going to win this fight. I've been encouraged that I think Americans still love their public lands. And if they want to be dumb enough to try to sell off a bunch of public lands, we're gonna fight them and we're gonna beat them. Yeah. Are we? We're out of time. Hasn't this been fun? I really want to thank you. If you came here with questions that we didn't get to, would you please reach out to John or Andy or Shane, and we will get you whatever information I was unable to get to today. But I really appreciate the chance to just be in conversation with all of you. Thank you for the honor of representing you in Congress, and I will see you the next time. Bye-bye.